so I'll give you some facts as we know them. Share as much information as I can. Please keep in mind that we have an active investigation going on, so there's some things we don't know yet, there's some things we're just not going to share yet, but we're going to share as much as we can with you. Early this morning at about 12:15, multiple 911 callers called the Ramsey County Emergency Communications Center to report that shots have been fired inside a busy bar right here behind me on West 7th Street. Officers rushed to the scene, they got there quickly, and they walked into a hellish situation. There were gunshot wound victims lying in the street outside the bar, there were gunshot wound victims lying on the sidewalk outside the bar, and there were gunshot wound victims lying on the floor inside the bar. All told, 15 people were shot. Like I said, there were a lot of people there at the time, so officers quickly secured the scene and made sure it was safe. And then they started working with Good Samaritans to render aid to people who had been shot. They also cleared the scene for St. Paul fire medics who arrived a short time later and began caring for people. All told, 14 people were transported to local hospitals. 4 went to Regions, 3 went to United, and 7 were sent to Hennepin County, HCMC. Thankfully, all 14 of those people are expected to survive their injuries. Sadly and tragically, a woman in her 20s who was shot inside the bar did die without being transported to the hospital. After that happened, officers from our Western District, our Central District, our Eastern District were all here to secure the scene, to identify possible witnesses, and to make sure that all the evidence was in place for our Forensic Services Unit. We're very thankful to our partners in the ECC who took the 911 calls and stayed calm and kept everybody calm and got our officers here with good information and clear communication. We also had the State Patrol help us, we had Metro Transit Police help us, Ramsey County Sheriff's Office helped us, as well as Maplewood. As you can imagine, something like this takes up a lot of resources. So some of those other agencies actually took 911 calls in our city while we were dealing with this tragedy. Right now we have a full-blown homicide investigation going on. We have a team of 5 investigators from our homicide unit working on it. We have our Forensic Services Unit working on it. We have our Video Management Unit working on it, and countless others. My partner and I just got off the phone with Chief Axtell, and he wanted us to reiterate to everyone out there that we are going to do everything we can to find the people responsible for this and hold them accountable. I say people because preliminary information indicates that there were multiple shooters. Right now we don't know exactly how many, but we're working on that, and we're working as diligently as we can. We also know that it's possible there are other victims out there who haven't made their way to the hospital yet. That's why we're asking anyone with information to call us at 651-266-5650. I'm going to repeat that because it's really important. If you know anything, if you're hurt, if you saw anything, call us, 651-266-5650. This is nothing short of a tragedy. We had people in the city of St. Paul out on a Saturday night having a good time, and we had other people who decided to pull guns with reckless disregard for human life and pull the trigger over and over and over and over again. And it ended in tragedy. Our hearts break for the young woman who died and for her loved ones and for everybody who was in that bar. I was talking to my partner who's been here 14, 15 years, and she can't remember anything like this happening in St. Paul before. So that's what we know right now. I can take questions, but again, please keep in mind we're early on in the investigation.
So do you think that this was an exchange of fire? Was this people shooting at each other in the bar?
It's too soon for us to speculate on that. We're still working out the details and trying to figure out what happened, but we will figure it out.
Initial reports just from people on scene were saying that some shots were fired inside the bar, others may have been fired outside of the bar as well. Do you have any information if there were multiple shootings?
I can confirm there's a lot of forensic evidence inside that bar, which tells me that shots were fired inside the bar. I haven't heard that any shots were fired outside the bar. I can tell you that while this was going on, we did have another shooting at another bar in St. Paul where a man was shot in the arm, but probably no connection to this incident.
And I know it's early in the investigation, but at this point, any
Idea of a possible motive? Do you believe it's criminal, or what do you think?
It's too soon to say for sure. Random in the sense that innocent victims were struck? Yes. Random in the sense that whoever were the people shooting at each other didn't know each other? Probably not, if that makes sense.
Has there been trouble at this place recently, or any calls here that you know of?
I'm not aware of any calls for service to this location. I can look that up for you. Certainly it's not something that's been on my radar. You know, we read a lot of reports every morning, so I haven't seen a lot.
Where does the investigation go from here when you're dealing with just the capacity that you're dealing with and the number of victims?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is a complex investigation. Like I said, there's bullet holes all over in the bar. We have to go in there. Our forensic services unit has to go in there and deconstruct it. Actually, they have to reconstruct the shooting and then deconstruct everything to figure out what happened. We have victims we have to interview, and they're in various states of injury. Some of them were shot in the ankle, some in the arm or hand, others more seriously. Again, thankfully, they're all going to survive. We also have witnesses. It was a busy bar. It was a nice weather on a Saturday night in St. Paul. People were out having a good time. So it's complex. It could take some time. But again, we want to reiterate, we're not going to stop until we identify and find the people who are responsible and do our part to hold them accountable.
Do you have any other information, or can you share any other information?
Now, at this time, we're not going to release that. Like I said, the Ramsey County Medical Examiner will conduct an autopsy. You know, I'm sure our officers have reached out to her family. I can't imagine what that conversation is like. Like I said, our hearts break for her and for her family. And I personally think about the officers who have to reach out and have that conversation. It's nothing short of tragedy.
Any weapons recovered yet?
We're not saying at this time.
I can just see, just for talking a little bit, it's really a rough night for everybody involved. Talk to me about responding to something like this and how your team is doing tonight.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's tough on our officers, but they're highly trained and they're deeply dedicated and committed. So they do their job. They go in there and they do what has to be done for the victims. And then they move on to other calls, or if they're investigators, they keep doing their job. At some time, they decompress. We have a great employee assistance program. We have peer mentors. It's hard on them. I'm not going to lie. I'm not a police officer myself. I work with police officers, and I know this weighs heavy on them. It's senseless. It's like I said, it's just a sheer tragedy. Someone's pulling the trigger with no regard for human life. You have people that are dedicated their careers and their lives to protecting human life, but they don't stop, and that's impressive. They just don't stop. They keep working, and I think that's the bottom line for us. And we're not going to stop until we find the people.
One last thing. You mentioned this, and I know this is separate. Can you describe kind of the scene when officers arrived on scene? What describe the situation for us?
I can only describe it as hellish. There were people on the street, there were victims on the sidewalk, and there were victims inside. I think about the young woman who died. 1 minute she's having a good time, the next minute she's lying in her friend's arms who are trying to save her life, and she didn't make it. I can't think of anything worse. Thank you.
You have been listening to a news conference from Steve Linders, who is the police information officer for the city of St. Paul. St. Paul has experienced a mass shooting. There were 15 people who were shot around 12:15 at a bar that's called the 7th Street Truck Park. The scene was described as hellish. Steve Linders described a scene where officers arrived and found victims lying on the ground outside of the bar, lying in the bar and also on the sidewalk. The suspects are not in custody, and they suggested that there are multiple suspects. Actually, they did say there were multiple suspects, and they suggested that the people who are firing knew each other. However, many innocent victims here have been shot, and again, one person is dead. And Steve Linders described a nightmarish situation for the young woman who died, a young woman in her 20s. He said 1 minute she's having a good time, and the next minute she's lying in her friend's arms, and they're trying to save her life. We will have much more on this breaking news on this mass shooting in St. Paul on WCCO coming up.